And now on Hospital Radio Swindon, a change to our scheduled programme and a Swindon Today special report. With the news that a major regeneration project is being planned for Swindon train station and the surrounding area, our content editor Dave Woods looks at what is being proposed, the impact and benefits for the town, and reaction.
There's been a station here in Swindon since 1842. Originally it was called Swindon Junction, so not to confuse it with the Swindon Town Station in Old Town. When the Midlands and South Western Railway Station closed to passengers in 1961, Swindon Junction became just Swindon. The original Victorian frontage of the station was replaced in 1972, with today's office block erected on the site. Now, some 50 years later, plans are again looking at regenerating this area.
The next train to arrive at platform 4 will be the 1638 Great Western Railway service to Swansea. This is the service from London Paddington.
Described as one of the main gateways to the town, the area has had some modifications over the years, including a royal visit by the then Duchess of Cornwall 4 years ago. But the office block, known as Signal Point, is now unused and most of the windows boarded up, with many local residents calling it an eyesore. Dan Round is the Industry Programme Director at Network Rail.
I think Swindon, from a train service perspective, is very well connected. It has 5 trains an hour to London, from a variety of places, from South Wales, Bristol and Bath and Cheltenham. That is one of the best that we see along our route into London. And of course, our train operating colleagues at GWR have just started the Oxford service, admittedly only on a Saturday, but that is another connectivity boost to Swindon. I think the work that we're now doing is looking to how can we maximise that so we get investment into Swindon and people coming to Swindon rather than people leaving Swindon because it's so well connected. And I think it's what we're trying to do here at the station is start to turn the table a bit and actually make Swindon a place where people want to come and live and invest and work and enjoy a good social life rather than just live and then leave each day and return of an evening. So the station and the work that we're starting to do here, and we really are at the start of it, is looking at ways that we can do that.
4 years ago, you took over the ownership of Signal Point. That's the office building above the station. At the time, you announced some plans to make improvements, but nothing started yet. Was there a reason for that?
So we are still looking at that. Signal Point is part of these plans that we are bringing forward around the station. And we're working through the details of what we can do with Signal Point from, a do-nothing scenario right the way through to a full refurbishment. We would prefer to be at the far end of that in terms of making it a much better welcome to the town. We accept it is not the nicest welcome to what is a great town, and we're just looking at how that stacks up from a kind of finance and investment point of view. But our plans are, and we're looking at all of those options currently to build those into the work that we're doing with Business West and the Borough Council here in and around the station.
Over the years, there have been calls from local residents for something to be done with the station's entrance. These passengers using it today shared their thoughts.
I think it looks a little bit run down, doesn't it? Yeah, it could definitely do with an improvement. More shops, more places to go, a bit of a better environment, more food places, maybe that might be nice. Love a snack before the train.
It could do with a bit of colour.
It's
a bit bleak, yeah, more seating as well.
Very run down, but it's a bit like the area, really. It's just saying it's your first impression when you come to Swindon. It's not brilliant.
And what perhaps do you think they could do to improve it?
Completely redo it.
Yeah.
That's why everybody goes somewhere else, I think. People go elsewhere.
And what about inside the station? What could improve there?
I don't think it's too bad inside. They've got a few shops and stuff like that, and it fits the amenities.
Bob Morrison, I'm the Friends Administrator for the Transwilts Community Rail Partnership. First building you see when you come into the station is the tower block. It's about 12 stories high. It was built in the 1970s when the old station front was redeveloped. But other than that, there's not been an awful lot of change at the station. In the early 2000s, they reopened Platform 4, which increased the capacity through the station, and more recently, of course, there's been electrification, and they also converted the old goods lift from the upstairs car park down to the gate line to improve accessibility. But other than that, there's not been an awful lot of change. But I suppose you do have to set that against the backdrop of how rail passenger usage has changed. If you look back to before COVID, there were about 3.75 million people going through the station every day. That includes people coming in and out, but also people changing trains. The latest figures, which are about a year old, that's now down to almost 2.75, so it's a million drop. So you need to factor that in. We need to get passengers back on the train, and it's a bit chicken and egg. You know, how much can you improve facilities in the hope that it'll bring passengers back? But definitely the building does need looking at. It is becoming an eyesore. Network Rail finally managed to get control back of it in 2020, just as the pandemic peaked. But since then, despite efforts between them and the Borough Council, very little has been done, and slowly but surely it's falling into decay. More and more windows are boarded up to stop the pigeons getting in. But it really isn't a very welcoming sight when you first get to the station.
There's been quite a lot of investment across the Western region. Reading, Bristol, Bath, even Chippenham now recently announced that they're going to have some improvements. So why do you think Swindon is lacking?
I think partly because it did have some attention to it in the relatively recent past. It's not decaying, it's not falling down the actual station itself, ignoring Signal Point. So the rest of the station, it functions. Swindon gets 10 trains an hour throughout the day, more in the peak, and it copes with that. So at the moment it's doing all right, but it doesn't leave much room for expansion. The big question is what you're going to use the building for. Going back, it would have been an obvious choice to make it back into offices, but with more and more people working from home, office accommodation is not so attractive to create. Whether it could be turned into a 50-50 mix of some offices and some accommodation. Obviously for people living close to the station it will be an advantage. There would be a problem with car parking, but if you've got the station nearby you may not need a car, which would presumably also help sustainability.
So what is being proposed? Down round from Network Rail.
Our plan around here, and as I said, this is at the very early stages, but our plan is we've got a lot of car parking land in and around the station. Between ourselves and the Borough Council, we own the majority of the land around the station. So we've got the right landowners on board. Our plan is to look at whether we could move the car parking into one site on the station, probably on the northern side, to free up the land that the car parking is currently on the town centre side, for a redevelopment of that, bringing homes and jobs and creating a much greater space and linking that to the town centre. So in simple terms, that's what we do. We'll move the car parking off of the land so that we can free that up to develop it and create that attractive environment in and around the station where we're the landowner.
I suppose it's very similar to a situation down in Plymouth, where they've had a regeneration scheme over the past 8-10 years. They've also got a tower block similar to Swindon station as well. Will it be the same challenges that you faced there?
Yeah, we faced some challenges with that scheme at Plymouth, and hopefully we won't incur as many as at Swindon. That's largely around kind of ownership of the buildings there. So we're in a better spot already at Swindon, with ourselves and the Borough Council owning all of the land and the buildings around it. But I would also point to the work that we're doing at Bristol, around the work at Bristol Temple Meads, which is probably 2 or 3 years ahead of where we are in Swindon, but bringing together partners and landowners to regenerate the land in and around the station. And at Temple Meads, at Bristol Temple Meads, we've secured £100 million worth of investment from the government to make some changes to the station and the land around the station to really drive that regeneration. If we can get Swindon into a similar spot in the next 5 to 10 years, that would be a fantastic achievement for all of us to take that forward.
The regeneration scheme could be a catalyst for new investment and new businesses to come to the town.
I'm Matt Griffith. I'm the Director of Policy at Business West. We are a business leadership organisation, but we've got a lot of history in regeneration based in the region. So we were set up when the railway works closed in Swindon back in the 80s, and we've been involved in big regen schemes. We are the body that helped kick off Regeneration Harbourside in Bristol, And I don't know if you can cast your mind back to Bristol in the 1990s, but it suffered from many similar problems to Swindon does. People weren't coming to the centre. It lacked overall investment, and it didn't have the kind of things that pull people in terms of retail, food and drink, leisure, art and culture. And we, in Bristol, we sat down with the local authorities and with other partners and brought people together with a vision of where they wanted to go. And now, Bristol's almost got too much demand. It's a very buzzy, exciting place. And we think there's the same potential for Swindon. It's got amazing connectivity, both locally and into London. It's got a really strong private sector in terms of, international companies like Nationwide and Intel, but some really interesting kind of innovative companies in things like green tech and pharmaceuticals. So the private sector demand is there. But what Swindon hasn't had is it tends to go around the other business parks around Swindon rather than actually in the centre of town. So we're here to help promote this as an opportunity, but also help private sector investors think, actually, we're looking for a well-located place close to some of the key things like London and universities and Heathrow, and offer up an opportunity for them to have places to work. And we think that's a real strong benefit. Swindon is, I think, the highest performing town outside of London in terms of productivity, but it's got to keep reinventing itself, keep investing, and we think this is the project to enable that to happen.
The Borough Council are keen to see this part of Swindon rejuvenated as part of their wider plans for the town centre improvements. Councillor Jim Robbins is the leader of the council.
We're working with Network Rail and some of the other government landowners around the railway station, really keen to see that drive forward. We know that the train station itself needs some love. We're all desperate to see Signal Point get some work. So I'm really excited that there's some opportunities for regeneration there, and hopefully a plan for Signal Point to get some meanwhile use, so that's one of the first things that people will see change.
As we heard earlier, down the M4 in Bristol, Temple Mead Station is currently undergoing a multi-million-pound regeneration project.
So I'm Councillor Andrew Brown. I am the Chair of Bristol City Council's Economy and Skills Policy Committee. The Temple Quarter project is a project that seeks to regenerate a huge area around Temple Meads Station in the heart of the city. People may know, for example, that when they used to come into Bristol on the train, they'd travel through an area that a lot of light industrial use, and for a long time there was a derelict building that had been the city's main sorting office, right next to the station. It wasn't necessarily the greatest welcome to Bristol. It's an area that is sort of ripe for redevelopment to allow it to function fully as in the way that a modern city would expect.
Lots of different parties and stakeholders involved in this project. What have been the challenges?
You're right, there is a lot of different stakeholders involved, and I think the challenge has been to draw them all together to create a common vision and a common purpose, to really flesh out what each of the partners needs and wants, but also what's best for the city. Bristol City Council is a key part of that, but there's also the West of England Combined Authority, the Homes England, which is an executive agency of government, and Network Rail, who obviously operate the rail station and the train tracks and all the infrastructure that goes around that. So bringing all these together has been a key part of the puzzle so far, as is trying to secure land ownership for those areas where there can be direct control and public hands of land around the area, and creating a broader master plan for the area as a whole, so that we have some sort of say over what gets developed, even in those areas that aren't actually owned by the council or any of the bodies that are part of the partnership.
And what's been the reaction of local residents?
I think it's interesting, because I think there is a real desire to see change and development. When you look at, for example, the post office building that I referred to earlier has been was derelict for years, and it eventually got demolished, and it's been the new university building campus has been built on that piece of land, and I think people being able to physically see new infrastructure being built as a result of this key to the development. There's other areas on the other side of the station where there's a couple of derelict hotels that people do, they're regularly cited as those people's biggest eyesores in the city, and the regeneration as and when it moves on and those are brought into the picture.
What do you think all the benefits to Bristol will be once all this has been completed?
It's a 20+ year programme all in all, but there are substantial benefits. So there will be new entrances to the station, so new access points to the station. One of those has already been completed, but because it's right next to the university building that's still being built, it's had to be wrapped up and put away for now. But there'll be a new entrance to the station to the east, a new entrance to the station concourse from the south, and improved facilities to the main entrance and what I call the back entrance of the station as is. So there'll be hugely it'll make Templemead Station much more accessible to people all around the city and a much better destination railway station. In the broader area, there'll be 10,000 new homes, 22,000 new jobs, so sort of 20-year plus period. That will bring a lot of new life to the area and meet some of the needs that we have for housing in the city, which is one of the big challenges that we face. We're looking to do it in an inclusive way, so there's inclusive growth policy being worked out. There will be a master planning effort to try and make sure that the shape of that is determined by need and by what's best for the city, as opposed to on a case-by-case basis when applications come through the planning system. And I think the other benefit is this sort of stakeholder approach, where we've got the University of Bristol, we've got Network Rail, we've got Homes England and the combined authority all working together with the City Council for the benefit of the city, and there will be spillover learning from that and maybe opportunities to recreate that sort of.
Swindon are just starting out on these regeneration ideas. What advice would you give them?
Key to pieces of advice would be to develop those close relationships, and I know that that's an approach that's already underway in Swindon, and to look at getting the master plan done at the earliest stage as possible. So working out the parameters of your site and having a vision for what will go where, what types of development will happen in different parts of the site, making space for facilities such as parks or green spaces, public areas, making sure that it's going to be a pleasant place for people around the clock. That's absolutely key. Make sure you get ahead of the market on that aspect.
So what are the social and economical benefits of regeneration schemes?
I'm Kathy Parker. I'm a Professor of Place Management at Manchester Metropolitan University. Facebook gave me a reminder yesterday that it's 10 years since we identified the 201 different factors that affect the success of town centres. And accessibility is the number one factor. So, having a well-connected railway station is really, really important to towns. So it's great that Swindon's having its railway station regenerated. And probably what's really good as well is that it's actually very near to the town centre.
And I presume that would then lead to other further investments and improvements elsewhere in a town or city.
Yes, absolutely. They're sort of anchors for sort of regeneration schemes. So Huddersfield is a good example where there's been a lot of investment around the public realm. So it's a real civic space now when you come out of the railway station. It's really sort of redefined the character of that town. So it's a great opportunity, not just to get investment around the railway station. It's a bit of a shot in the arm, really, optimism and thinking about reinvigorating the town centre.
Because town centres are struggling at the moment, aren't they?
Town centres have always changed. I mean, they've been quite stable for a while because we've been used to going to them for shopping, obviously with the internet and what happened with COVID. we're getting a lot of what we buy in different ways. So we need to start thinking about what we're going to use with all that space in town centres. So seeing a lot more sort of multi-functional sort of town centres that have got culture, health, education. And reading the plans for Swindon's, the regeneration of the 10-acre site around the station, it's good to see that there's plans for like education and health, because you don't want, railway stations are important. They bring people into a town, but you also want things around them, to give people reasons to stay, so they're not just passing through them. Because remember, a railway station can bring people to your town, but if your town's not very good, they can also use it to go somewhere else.
These projects can cost millions of pounds. How can you measure if a scheme has been value for money and successful?
You know what? I think the easiest thing to do is just to look at how busy a place is. Sometimes when they're a bit out of the town centre and there's been regeneration around there, it all feels a little bit like samey. There's no real character to the regeneration. There was criticisms of the Reading's railway station because it wasn't sort of in keeping with its sort of history and heritage. So I think you've only got to look really at the station, and you look at the route between the station and the town centre. If that's busy, I'd say that's been a successful scheme. Regeneration is always a good opportunity to sort of like, tidy things up, but we do want the place looking better, not worse. And so that schemes aren't always to everyone's taste. But just going back to some fundamentals, public transport and railways, they serve often the most disadvantaged people in society. People on lower incomes, young people especially, elderly people. So there's lots of functional, practical reasons why we want we want our railway stations to be regenerated and used.
So what would the benefits of this regeneration scheme be for Swindon? Matt Griffiths from Business West again.
For the past 10, 20 years, a lot of new businesses have come out of several things. One is they've come out of where the talent is, and that often approximates to where the universities are. And the other thing is people want to go to a place where they can do other things. So they can go for a drink with their colleagues after work. They can shop at lunchtime. They can have nice restaurants. They can feel it's a place that's more than just about the office. And what I think this potential redevelopment around the station offers is both of those things. So people may not realise, but the University of Oxford and the University of Bath have invested in a new technology centre just near the station at the carriage work. That's going to be bringing in lots of PhDs, lots of talent and lots of industry who's interested in that. To do that, you need the demand, you need the footfall, and you need the quality new buildings. So I think this project really does offer opportunity to harness both those things in terms of attracting talent into the town centre rather than just for fringes, and also getting people to visit Swindon. And it's a great place. So it feels like, to me, it feels like Swindon that the time is right, which is what I think why we were confident in investing in this programme and why we wanted to go public and let people know it was starting to happen.
So how will this regeneration scheme here in Swindon be funded?
If this was just a railway project, we would probably be focusing our attention on the Department for Transport. The beauty of bringing Matt and his colleagues from Business West and the Borough Council in and working together on this is that it opens up a number of other channels into central government beyond the Department for Transport. So we are in discussions with people like the Department for Business and Trade as well to see what options and potential that could bring by way of kind of corporate investment and investment into the town. So we're looking at as many partners as we can to make this happen. It will be a combination, I think, of public and private sector funding to make it happen. I think that's just realistic for where the public sector finances are. And if we want to make this happen quickly, then we will require that private sector investment coming as well. But I think we also need to look beyond our traditional ways of doing things. And that's why we're taking the examples of Plymouth and Bristol and applying those to Swindon as we've outlined.
And what is the timeline you're hoping for?
Well, we're at the very early stages, and I must emphasise that point, I'm afraid. And subject to those devils of planning and funding, we would hope to see something come to fruition in the next kind of 5 to 10 years at Swindon in and around the station. They're two fairly big hurdles for us to get over, but we're working closely with the Borough Council, particularly on the planning side, to work up the plans and make sure that they are working with us on those. The other thing, though, that I would add is that some of this has already started. Matt was referencing the works that we've done in the carriage works, which is at the far end of the station site. A lot of that has already been refurbished, and we see that as the kind of start of this. This is going to be a series of building blocks over the next kind of 5, 10, 15 years to make this happen. We're not going to do it in one big go, but I think that realistically, given we are at the early stages of this, and this is the exciting bit, we want to get people excited about it and see the potential, then we're probably looking at that kind of timescale.
So by the new decade we could see this area either side of the main railway line between London and the West Country and Wales start to look totally different. For those currently involved in the project, they're hoping it'll be full steam ahead for one of the town's major regeneration schemes, and it won't get derailed like so many other projects of the past.
Swindon Today, the town's Gateway Regeneration Unveiled, was written, produced and presented by Dave Woods for Hospital Radio Swindon.